Hello, welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Clarisse Fortuné. First, the headlines. Former DRC President Joseph Kabila is now on trial for treason, accused of backing M23 rebels in the country's troubled east. He's also facing charges of murder and rape, but calls the case a sham driven by politics. We'll get the latest. In Nigeria's northeast, food aid slashed, jihadist attacks rising, and hunger reaching crisis levels. With the UN halting operations next month, the fallout could be catastrophic. And this incredible story of a young Senegalese herder who has returned to his village after 5 years of transhumance across several countries. He set out with only a few sheep and came back with an impressive herd and to a hero's welcome. A historic trial is underway in Kinshasa. Former DR Congo President Joseph Kabila is facing charges of treason, murder, and rape before a military court. Prosecutors accuse him of backing the M23 rebels who still control a large part of the country's mineral-rich east. His successor, President Félix Tshisekedi, says Kabila is the mastermind behind the rebel movement. Kabila calls the trial political, an instrument of oppression. Emmett Livingston is in Kinshasa with more.
It's an unprecedented court case in the Democratic Republic of Congo. On Friday, the military high court began a treason trial in absentia of the country's former president, Joseph Kabila. The court read out 8 charges against the former president over alleged support for Rwanda-backed militants and plotting to overthrow the government of President Félix Tshisekedi. As well as treason, Kabila is also accused of participating in an armed movement, of crimes against peace, of apology for terrorism, amongst other crimes. Treason carries the death penalty in Congo. Kabila ruled the country for 18 years, running an administration accused of vast corruption and of numerous human rights abuses. But in 2019, he handed power to incumbent President Félix Tshisekedi in Congo's first ever peaceful transition. Initially, Kabila kept a low profile, but there were always lingering fears in ruling circles that he hadn't quite left politics. Then in May this year came the turning point. After staying outside of the country for years, Kabila returned, making a trip to the eastern Congolese city of Goma, which has been occupied by Rwanda-backed M23 rebels since January. President Tshisekedi has branded Kabila as the brains behind the armed group, which has seized swathes of the Congolese east with Rwanda's help. The Congolese National Assembly voted to lift Kabila's immunity in May, and the military pressed charges. Kabila has called the legal proceedings an instrument of oppression of a dictatorship. But the former president isn't particularly popular in Congo, and the court case appears to be broadly supported. Congo's Vice Minister for Justice appeared at the court on Friday, where he told reporters that justice does not negotiate. The facts of the case weren't examined, however, with lawyers acting for the Congolese state requesting more time to study the documents. Another hearing is scheduled for next week.
Huge cuts in foreign aid, resurgent jihadist attacks, and rising food prices are pushing millions closer to starvation in northeastern Nigeria. On Wednesday, the UN World Food Programme announced it will suspend aid operations in the country starting next month, a move that could have devastating consequences for vulnerable communities. Emily Ball has more.
Hunger is looming in northeastern Nigeria, where more than 1 million people face starvation. This World Food Programme Nutrition Centre provides the crucial support Zara Bakar needs to feed her baby Aisha.
I was enrolled into the program for malnutrition treatment. As soon as we gave my daughter some food, she started to recover. Before, she couldn't eat any food at all, but after she began treatment, she started eating again and now plays and crawls around.
But Zara might soon no longer be able to receive support. Worldwide cuts to foreign aid have exacerbated the humanitarian situation in the area, which had already been struggling with resurgent jihadist attacks and a spiralling cost of living. In the absence of funding, emergency food supplies have almost run out.
As of now, all the warehouses of WFP are empty, and there is really a huge crisis because of the funding situation.
The WFP recently announced that it will be forced to suspend all emergency food assistance.
Beginning of August, we will have to face the heartbreaking reality of having to suspend our operations for the populations in northeast Nigeria. Not because there is no need, but there is no resources for that assistance. So over 1.3 million people will lose life-saving food assistance and nutrition support.
Without additional funding, 300,000 children would be at risk of severe malnutrition in the region, and more than 700,000 displaced people could be left with no means of survival.
And meanwhile, another deadly attack in central Nigeria. At least 14 people were killed when gunmen ambushed a vehicle returning from a busy weekly market in Bokos. That's in the Plateau State. The midday assault on Thursday is the latest in a series of violent incidents in the region where intercommunal tensions and armed attacks have claimed hundreds of lives. Local leaders are renewing calls for stronger security in rural areas. In Sudan, more than 1.3 million people have returned home despite ongoing violence and devastation. The UN says many are heading back to areas once deemed too dangerous, including Khartoum, but face shattered infrastructure, water shortages, and the threat of unexploded mines. With aid operations severely underfunded, UN agencies are pleading for urgent international support to help rebuild lives.
Recently, we have witnessed a return of displaced from inside Sudan. About 1 million Sudanese have returned to their original areas of residence. And here we are talking mainly to Al Jazeera, as 71% have returned to Al Jazeera. And we are talking about almost 320 to 350 who have returned from outside Sudan to their areas. It is also important to mention that 8% of the return so far has been to Khartoum, and we expect that by the end of this year, about 2.1 million displaced will return to Khartoum.
Now let's get into a lighter mood. Have you ever imagined yourself on a visit to a major museum, busting through a wall, arms full of looted African artifacts, and ready to return them to their rightful homes? No? Well, you may soon have the chance, thanks to South African video game studio Nyamakop, and Emily Boyles tells the story.
Born out of South Africa, a new video game hopes to present an alternative to dominant narratives around repatriation.
What's this all about?
Treaties were signed, promises made and broken. Is it stealing to take back what was stolen?
Stolen? Who's stealing them?
Us.
Scheduled for release within the next year, this heist game is called Relooted. Created by the studio Nyamakop, the game is set in an African futurist universe. Players have to plan stealthy missions to reclaim precious artifacts previously stolen from the African continent.
Just in general, the conversation about repatriating African artifacts is something that a lot of people think about. So you do actually find people talking about this and wanting to see that kind of representation in media. But there aren't actually games where you can do this.
But artifacts aren't just treated as trophies. Players have to return them to a safe house in South Africa where they can learn more about their significance and how they were stolen.
We deal with a very important topic of, restitution of artifacts. But at the end of the day, we're doing it in a way that's fun, that you get to go in, learn about the artifact, and then scan the space and take your time trying to solve the puzzle so you can run out of there.
According to a report by the French government, approximately 90% of sub-Saharan African cultural heritage is in the possession of Western collections. Relooted's designers hope reclaiming these objects might help shift how the next generation views their culture and identity.
Now, it already bears the hallmarks of a movie in the making, the true story of an extraordinary odyssey in Senegal. A young herder has just returned to his village after 5 years of transhumance across several countries. He set out with only a few sheep and came back with an impressive herd. Upon his return, he was welcomed as a hero by his community. Our Dakar correspondent Aminiato Diallo has more.
5 years of walking, watching and enduring while guiding his animals across the Sahel in search of grass. Demba Hamadissi left northern Senegal in 2020 with just a few sheep. Today, he's back with an entire herd in the respect of his whole community. His journey is seen as heroic, especially in a region where herders face huge challenges. Drought has wiped out a lot of grazing lands, making it harder to feed their animals. According to the UN, more than 80% of pastures in the region are now damaged. On top of that, armed conflicts and tighter border controls are pushing herders to take longer and riskier paths, often with heavy losses. Demba's 5-year journey is deeply rooted in the nomadic tradition of the Fulani herders, one of the largest nomad groups on earth. They move with seasons to keep their animals alive. Today, that way of life is under threat. Many young people are moving to the cities or finding other work. Many see Demba as one of the last keepers of this ancient way of life. One internet user even called him the heir of a tradition almost disappearing. For Demba, this journey wasn't about fame or glory, it was about staying true to his roots as the son of a herder and a proud Fulani.
Well, just wait for the movie. And finally, Benin has appointed acclaimed director Spike Lee and his wife as its ambassadors for African Americans in the US. This initiative aims to reconnect with descendants of Africans affected by the transatlantic slave trade. As ambassadors, the Lees will promote Beninese efforts to restore legacy and culture for Afro-descendants worldwide. Their appointment is part of Benin's broader strategy to reach millions descended from those forcibly taken from its shores. And this concludes our program. Thank you for watching Hour in Africa on France 24.